Hey guys, Colton here. We'll get back to the podcast in just 1 minute. I just wanted to let you know that my new book, 24 Rules of Masculinity, is officially out. If you've been resonating with the topics we've hit on in this podcast, discipline, purpose, identity, what it means to be a man today, this book was built for you. It's a straight talking guide packed with hard lessons, biblical principles, and the kind of clarity that I think a lot of us are starving for. So whether you're just starting on your journey or looking to get back on track, I wrote this to be something that you can pick up, apply, and carry with you. You can find the 24 Rules of Masculinity on Amazon and through the link in the description. I would love to hear what you guys think. Now, back to the episode.
Welcome back to Chasing Masculinity. Today, we're rewinding the clock. If you could sit across the table from your 18-year-old self, what would you say? What warnings would you give? What encouragement would you offer? Today, I'm joined by my good friend Matthew Navarro, and today we're pulling back the curtain on things we wish we would have known when we first stepped into adulthood. From chasing performance instead of purpose to fighting quiet battles with discipline, identity, and faith. This is the kind of conversation we wish someone had handed us a decade ago. This isn't about regret, it's about growth because, well, we can't go back in time. We can help the next generation of men rise up stronger, sooner, and hopefully with fewer scars. Let's get into it. Welcome, Matthew. It's been a minute since you've been on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here to talk about the subject. It's been a long time.
Yeah, happy to have you. Well, let's just jump into it. I think we both just kind of prepared some points and we'll just kind of go back and forth and see where we end up. But the first thing that I thought of when thinking about this subject is you are not your performance. So I know this one's more abstract and less specific, but I think certainly when I was younger and probably much later than 18, a lot of my value, especially in high school still, was tied to things like sports and whatever I got for grades and my achievements, like my academic standing, how I graduated, what college I was going to, what degree program I got accepted into. It was the very tangible things on the report card or the very tangible results from sports or what have you. I feel like that's probably fairly common for a lot of high schoolers, teenagers, 18-year-olds though.
Yeah, I would say so. I think a majority of teenagers, especially 18 years old, they're trying to build on their identity. But the reality is that they're still, like you said, involved in sports, involved in school, and they kind of measure their success based off these things because they haven't lived a lot of the rest of life, the rest of what life has to offer after college, after getting a job. And so it feels like at 18 years old, you have a pretty narrow viewpoint of what life means to you. And a lot of that is revolved around your success.
You and I were both big high school athletes playing at least one pretty competitive sport at that age. At least for me and a lot of the friends, because I hung out with all the other athletes and whatnot. Mm-hmm. A lot of my friends, their hierarchy within the school or how they viewed themselves or how they carried themselves, their friends, how they interacted with girls, it all kind of came down to how they viewed their performance. And I'm sure it was probably the same for you, but how a high school athlete competes that week or where they sit on the bench kind of plays a pretty large weight in who they are, who their identity is at that stage in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at 18 years old, you tell yourself all these things about who you are based off of how you perform, especially in a sport.
right? If you're dedicating hours and hours of your week to training and playing in games, then ultimately that becomes a big part of your life. And therefore, your performance is really important. And then other things tack on to that too, like going to school and all these ideas that, you know, if you perform well, you'll get the girl. If you perform well, people will respect you. If you perform well, people will know your name. So yeah, that was a huge part of my life too when I was a teenager.
So what would we say to that now with the prompt of you are not your performance, or your identity is not rooted in your performance? I feel like it's a lot easier when you have hit some level of next stage in life, even if that is college or whatever you're doing after college, I feel like that's what a lot of college is too, is everyone says it's to find your identity, you meet your crowd, what have you. Mm-hmm. But finding out what your identity is truly rooted in beyond metrics after high school, I think that's a lot more common. I think there's a lot more paths and opportunities to explore that after high school. But it's hard to, when you're in high school, you have that very specific frame. You have that very specific box that you're living in, and that's how you view the world, is through that frame. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to view that, especially for people who live highly in metrics in high school, like athletes, to view that any differently. But it really does come down to just living more life outside of that, to see it's not purely the metrics that are defining who you are. Especially, like, I'd be curious on your thoughts, but for me, it wasn't just the metrics is how I was viewed. It's the metrics is how I viewed myself. Therefore, that's how I carried myself. And then that's how others viewed me because of that. I feel like a lot of that was self-inflicted. The performance-based view of myself and my identity. I don't know if that's something that you can relate to. You think broader scale is more of the problem for you or not your performance?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is on a broader scale. From an early age, especially in our culture, we get taught what is important, right? And so when you're in school, grades are important. And then that leaks into other things too, pieces of your identity at 18 years old, like sports. And so we carry this around with us, that the things that you can measure are what is important in your life. And so I think it's really common for people to graduate high school or college and lose that piece of their identity because they realize that there's so many more important things to life that aren't measured, and that you can't grade your success on. And so it's always a weird time, I think, for adults at that age to really grasp what the world is and grasp what success is when you don't have some of those things to measure you anymore, when you don't have people grading you. Or you don't have performance in sports. You might have something like at a job where you might get like a yearly review of like, hey, this is how you did. It seems like after that, there's just not a lot as an adult. So
yeah, it's a lot harder to track yourself empirically, unless you're tracking maybe more hedonic empirical metrics like salary, money in the bank.
Yeah,
value of the car in the yard, all that stuff. But there is a lot less. That's probably what helps lead people away from this, is the less metrics that you're able to track your identity in, the less rooted your identity will be in the metrics. So I think the solution, let's go to the next one I have here, because I think it ties pretty well with this. And I think some potential solutions will actually come out of this one that would marry well with this first one. So the second one I have here is discipline beats motivation. This has kind of been a big topic of mine lately in my personal life, and just what I've been thinking about this a lot is the idea of discipline versus motivation, because I think the concept is you need to feel inspired, you need to be motivated, and then that's your barrier to entry to get you going into something, which very well may be the case, but that is a very short-sighted way to get things done because it's not going to carry you to the end zone. You know, it's going to be very limiting in how much motivation. Motivation isn't going to fill your gas tank. That's not going to be the fuel. It's more just the starter to get you going. But a lot of the things I did personally were fueled by motivation first, and I did not have the discipline built up. So a lot of the stuff that I had started, a lot of the journeys I went on were very short because they were only fueled by motivation, or I'd get very motivated to do this one specific thing, and you do it for this little period of time. It's like that 2 a.m. you get inspired to like rearrange your entire room and start your whole life, and you get halfway done and you give up and your room's a mess. I feel like that analogy can be pretty well prescribed to a lot of 18-year-old Colton.
Yeah.
a lot of the discipline I thought I had was purely motivation, even if it was I thought it was discipline because I was doing hard things. Like I was waking up at 6 a.m., which as a teenager is pretty early, and I was going to lift weights before class and sports and all that stuff every day. But that was not discipline, that was motivation. But I thought it was discipline because it was hard. You can be motivated to do a lot of stuff. Discipline is more associated with taking on a hard task, taking up a mantle of something that's going to be difficult. So I misconstrued the two. And what that did is that motivation, when it ran out, I stopped, and I did not allow discipline to build to keep me going. As motivation fades, that discipline that's supposed to take over is what builds men. And that's that transitionary period of when you're 18, which is a wild concept to be considered an adult at 18. I did not feel like an adult at 18 at all. But I'd be curious your thoughts on that, on the idea of how an 18-year-old can build discipline instead of just relying on that motivation alone, or if you have any similar experiences in that.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. I know for me at 18 years old, I was in that zone where I was doing what I wanted to do, right? Whatever I had motivation to do. There was a few things I was disciplined in, like I knew I had to get a job, some sort of part-time job, and go to classes. But apart from that, I think I found that after a few years of living like this, when I actually graduated college, there was a season where I didn't know what to do because I didn't have any more motivation. And all I was left with was my disciplines. And I learned that, I was disciplined in showing up to work on time, and that was about all I had in my life. And so I think for every man, there comes a season where they are kind of stripped down to the bare minimum. And it really exposes, are you disciplined or are you not? What are the points that you're weak in? And so I don't think it's entirely possible to not completely hit that season. I do think there's something to be said about learning how to be disciplined, even in the 18-year-old version of myself where I was super motivated, so that when that motivation fades, I am more disciplined. I have more to me. But I do think every man kind of hits that stumbling block where they have to figure things out. What do you think, Colton?
You brought up a really good point there about like that season of life, or being in that season as a teenager. I think that's important to remember. I think that could be its own thing right there. What you said is season of life, because everything in the moment feels like that is your entire life when you're that age. When you're a teenager, which is what you still are at, as an 18-year-old, you're still in that threshold of teenager turning into an adult, but you're still developing, and you're still very much an adolescent that is learning and growing. But it is a season of life when things happen, and everything feels like, when something bad happens, specifically at that age, it feels like that is your entire life. That is the all-encompassing thing that's important to you and nothing else.
Yeah.
And a part of that comes from just not having the life experience and immaturity and what have you, but it is a season of life. I think that could probably be an antidote to what we were talking about before, which is you are not your performance, and how discipline beats motivation is remembering that it is a season of life.
Yeah.
It's a season of life, whatever your current metrics are now, whatever your performance are. So it's not your identity. That is a season of life. You will outgrow that. You will outlive that. So if that's all you're rooted in, it's going to leave you behind very shortly. Mm-hmm. And same with discipline beats motivation. If all you have is motivation, it's a season of life. You are going to move past that at some point in time. And if you don't have what it takes to keep going, if you're down a road of trying to do something difficult that's good and you want to keep it up, when that season of life of motivation ends, you're going to move into one where you better have discipline. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it will fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
So I love that idea of season of life. That's a good point that I think can be applied to a lot of this. Probably this whole subject as a whole is, I don't think I would have understood what that concept meant as an 18-year-old. I still probably am learning.
Yeah, it's really hard. I think as we go through life, it's really easy to see our present, right? Our present is always first, and it's easy to look on our past. But I do think it's really hard to understand what the future could look like. And so I guess the tip I would give my 18-year-old self is don't think that your version of what the future is ultimately what's going to happen. Another tip I would give is also listen to people who have gone through more season of life. I know it sounds lame, but listen to your parents, listen to people who are a little older than you, and listen from their experiences. I think we tell ourselves as teenagers and at 18 years old that, we're not going to hit some of those stumbling blocks. And we have this perfect vision of what our future is going to look like. But the reality is we should be planning to fail. And when you're kind of planning on those things, then when they pop up, you're not as blindsided, and it really helps. So I guess that's what I would say to my 18-year-old self. What would you say?
Let's dig into that more. Plan to fail. Mm-hmm. I think that is something that deserves a bit of attention, because you hear some billionaire moguls say that. You hear some motivational speakers say that. The business metrics show it's not that all these businesses fail and this one found success, and that's why you have companies like Apple. Reality, it's failure to failure to failure to failure until you find success, and it goes back to the discipline, but it's that consistency to keep going until you do find that success. And what a lot of people say is, if you're searching for success, you're going to fail. If you are searching for failure, then that is how you find success. And what I mean by that is you go looking because you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. So you go with not the anticipation you're going to fail necessarily, but you go and you set out into life knowing that you're going to fail. You have the foreknowledge that, yes, I'm going to hit a failure, but this is the direction I need to go. If you have some sort of path or you have some sort of resemblance of a direction in life, you go into that knowing that failure is imminent, but that's not the end of the road. You have to jump from that as a leap pad to something that might be another failure, and you keep going and it might be another failure. And it's through that, the failures, that you're going to learn and grow and build up the tools that are necessary so that when you do get a chance at success, you're ready. You have the ammunition to essentially that you've built through all these trials and errors of failing. Maybe not intentionally. I don't want to say intentionally fail, but you're doing something knowing that failure might be there, and if it does, you're using that as a leap pad and as a tool to grow and better yourself.
Yeah, something else I would add on that, in addition to plan to fail, I think also plan for your identity to change. Plan for you to change. And so I think it's a real problem. And it's of course just a learning step, but I think a lot of 18-year-olds, when you kind of enter into that adulthood stage, you say, okay, this is who I am. This is what my identity is. This is what it's built around. Maybe it's built around a sport or something else. Or maybe these are what my beliefs are. This is what I truly believe in. Even this political stance, this is what I believe in. And I think if you hold on to that, like, oh, this is just who I am and I'm never going to change, then you go throughout life like really closed-minded. And I think when you do hit something, like if you're an athlete and you say, oh, playing basketball is part of my identity. Well, when you have a child and you gain 30 pounds, well, guess what? It changes your identity. Like there's just some things that happen in life that just change who you are. And if you're ready for that and you're expecting your identity to change, I think you handle those storms in life a lot easier.
That one sounded like it came from a little bit of personal experience there.
Absolutely.
No, you're right. I mean, Paul Tripp says this is you shouldn't expect somebody else to be the same person that they were when you met them. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason we can't apply that to ourselves. There's no reason you would want to be the same person you were. Why would you want to be the same person that you were 2 years ago, a year ago, a month ago? I don't even want to be the same person I was a week ago, because that implies some level of stagnation. Mm-hmm. So change is both for people that you interact with, the relationships you have, your partner, but also yourself. It's good. And you're right, rooting your identity in something that is so fluid and is bound to change. If you are not prepared for that and you're not willing to make that change, you're only going to set yourself up for failure. Any 18-year-old who knows exactly what political statement they hold true is either the wisest person on the planet or a moron, because or wildly immature, because as people mature, it's actually there's stats showing that 16 to like 18 to 22 year olds hold wildly different political beliefs than those same people once they hit like 25 to 30.
Yeah.
Like, you're bound to change.
It's a good thing to know what you believe in and to know who you are at any given moment. But I guess what we're arguing is the tip we would give to our 18-year-old self is that prepare for change. Like prepare for some of that to get tossed around. Because I think if you walk through life closed-minded, you're going to have a really tough time. I think everybody should be walking through life open-minded. Even if you believe in something really, really firmly, to be willing to listen to another opinion or another side and think about it. And then, just different life stages, different things that happen along the journey of becoming an adult, graduating college, working, having kids, family. They really do change your perspective on things. And so just be prepared for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Be prepared to challenge your identity.
Yeah, I would agree.
I got a fun one for us here. Porn will destroy you quietly. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if this is something that people are struggling with more or less. Mm-hmm. But from the stats you hear about, like 40% of all internet traffic is porn or something like that, it doesn't sound like it's getting better. So I feel like that's something that should probably be addressed, especially at that age when you're not really at a stage in life where you have a life partner and you're able to have somebody control your hormones and emotions a little bit with you, but also have somebody that can help you control those hormones and emotions, if you know what I mean. You're still very young. So porn is that easy outlet that everybody goes to as a teenager, and unfortunately a lot of adults.
Yeah.
And it is nasty, both in porn, but also what it does to you, mentally and psychologically, and how it skews your version or how your view on relationships. Mm-hmm. And that sounds so mundane, or that sounds so like a scapegoat, like saying, well, porn will destroy how you view your future relationships. Sounds like saying, well, weed is a gateway drug.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, sure, but you're jumping from nothing to an extreme until you actually dig into it. And you actually start looking like, okay, but we know this because it's happened, and we have like 60%, I read somewhere, 60% of divorces cite porn as one of the issues.
Mm.
It's like, okay, well, maybe just 60% of people who are bound to get divorced have already sought a different outlet or whatever. Sure, I'm sure there's arguments to be made, but you can't ignore the fact just empirically that something's not right with this. Mm-hmm. And then you take into effect what porn does is it puts you on the limit of what you enjoy. And as you're perpetually seeking the edge of something, the edge moves. The boundaries are continually shifting to the fringe, which is why now that porn's been around for, I mean, it started out in magazines where it was somewhat scandalous, and now there's some incredibly messed up things online because those boundaries keep shifting. It's been around for a while now. We know that people are perpetually seeking the next thrill. And as they do that, that becomes the norm and it pushes them out even more. And that's why Pornhub had that massive scandal and they had to delete 80% of their website because it turns out 80% of the website was illegal because it was minor or non-consensual or what have you.
Yeah.
Because that's where people started to seek things because you're going to naturally get pushed to those limits. It's the same concept to like serial killers, right? They don't start doing, when a serial killer's caught and you hear some of these insane, horrific things that they've done, they didn't start out that way. They started out as a child or adult or what have you, toying with the fringes, if you will. They're constantly on the verge of excitement for them in the moment, and you do that in like you abuse your family cat, and you continually push that boundary, and it gets you worse and worse, and then you take a life, and it works your way. It's the same with porn. You're starting where you feel you are safe, which is why saying it will destroy your relationship, it could lead you to viewing how sex in a relationship is supposed to work or your view on it. But it will lead you there even if you can't see it where you are now because you are going to continually push the fringe. And as you get more into the fringes, as the boundaries expand of what you're comfortable with, that just pushes you further from reality. And as you go further from reality, your expectations are going to become skewed. So there's just a whole slew of issues related to why porn is just awful at any age, regardless of the hormones flowing through your body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest lie I told my 18-year-old self were these two. That one, I'm not addicted to porn, right? It's not addictive. At any moment, I could stop looking at it. And that was the furthest thing from the truth. And oh man, was my life rocked when I started dating my wife. And then I kept doing it. And I was addicted to it. And then when I got married to her, and I still struggled with it. And so, first of all, I hope that if there's a younger man listening to this, like take this seriously. Like it really is damaging. I know it doesn't feel like it's damaging because it's mainly between you and this issue, especially if you don't have a significant other or you're not married. But the reality is, just like you said, it's addictive. It's a drug, and it skews your view of relationships. And for me, I really didn't want to be watching it when I got married or when I entered into a serious relationship, but it still happened and I still struggled with it. And so, yeah, be prepared for that battle. I do think there's something to be said that most men are just going to have to enter that battle outright and learn how to beat it. But if you can, man, do some due diligence and make it easier for yourself and realize how important this issue is from a young age.
It really is. Like once you've done it once, that seed has been implanted in your mind, and it's hard to escape. As somebody who hasn't thought of it I've stayed away of it for years. Every once in a while, there'll be, I'll call it like a demon almost in the back of my mind where it's like a thought that pops up like, what if? And thankfully, I'm at the point now where just my pride would never let me fall back into that. It's still like, it still pops up. It's still there. There's still some level of temptation, all because of if you do it at least once, that seed is planted. So you really have to work hard on squashing that and completely. I've talked about this before, but if it's a vice, it needs to die with your old self. Like it needs to be completely severed. There cannot be any resemblance, any semblance of that's who I was before. That's the old me. It's in the rear view mirror. It can't even be there. It just needs to die, because otherwise, maybe you can talk about this, it can come back really easily.
Mm-hmm.
There's been many times where all of a sudden vices like this, they come back, and all of a sudden you're a month in and you're like, how did this happen? I've been years clean, and now poof, here we are again.
Yep. Yeah, I think for me personally, I built an identity of my self-worth. I think most of us are like this, but we want people to like us and appreciate us. And I think that's something that actually porn fulfills, is like you feel loved in that moment, right? You feel appreciated, you feel special. And so, yeah, if there was a time in my life where I entered into a season or even just a day where I was like, oh man, it was not a good day. I did not feel special. I did not feel loved today. You know, that was the number one temptation I had to fight that day.
It's the easy button.
It's the easy button, the easy outlet. It's so easy to keep confidential, right? Hide it. And I think for a lot of men, we feel like it's just like a solo battle, right? It's just us in this addiction. And there's some truth to that, right? Like a lot of times men do not bring in either close brothers or friends into this situation, or they feel like they don't have anybody to help them. But it is important to know that this should not be a battle you fight alone, because ultimately you're just going to fail and fail. Or maybe you get to a point where, like you said, like, oh man, I've been doing really good for the season. Well, guess what? If you have a bad run, it's going to come back to tempt you, and it's easy to fall right back into it.
And this is a hard one, because we've talked about this a lot, brotherhood and how you're supposed to have men that you can rely on and how good that can be. And I know that would be beneficial in this scenario, but it's hard for me to even say that, because this one feels so weird to talk about with anybody else. It feels like you said, this should be a solo battle. This should be, if you're fighting this, you pick up your sword and you slay this dragon on your own. This is something that I think literally almost every single, especially teenager, especially 18-year-olds, are also fighting. I don't think the issue is you're alone in doing it. I think the issue is you might be alone in wanting to stop doing it. But again, it's weird to say find a support group of peers and talk to them about this, because one, it's pretty common. So most people, especially if you're not religious, if you're not a Christian, you probably aren't viewing this as something that's really that bad. Even if you are a Christian, you have other Christians, this would be a weird one to go to them with.
Yeah.
But I know there are communities, there are churches that will just host generic seminars or what have you that just everybody comes to, everybody no matter what, just to have the resources, even if it's they have the position to help somebody else. So it's a pretty low barrier to entry to get in there without being judged. But this is a hard one to go and talk to somebody about.
It is hard. Yeah, I think our culture is just now turning around. And so you might see like YouTubers or other social media influencers actually addressing it, and you can, hop on an app for counseling, whatever it may be. And so I hope that as this kind of continues, that it's made more regular that like men should be seeking help, and it's okay to seek help, right? But you're right. It still feels like it's an internal battle. There's not a lot of safe people to tell, especially if you don't have a lot of close people in your life. I will say though, there is something really freeing if you can find one person in your life, to share and talk about this with. Like that's a huge relief. Even if you just talk about the issue with them, sometimes that can even just get you kick-started on tackling this problem.
That's a good thing you brought up too, about how this is becoming more mainstream of an issue. So if this is something that you're battling with, there's probably millions of resources out there on the internet and people like on YouTube talking about this thing, about how they've beat it or going public with their battle. or having some sort of free and public game plan that you can implement in your own ways. So this is one that thankfully, because we now have turned that tide, hopefully, I really hope this is a tide that we've turned as a society.
Yeah.
That we're able to, all of this information is now accessible and free to anybody who is struggling with this. So there is a lot of resources for people now that they can chase if this is something that they're even flirting with the idea of thinking that this is bad, or they're thinking, I'm kind of struggling with this. I don't quite know what to do. Don't know if I want to stop. Just look into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Just spend 5 minutes on Google and just like, what are the negative side effects of porn?
Yeah, right.
Let me hear this guy's testimony on this YouTube video that has 30 million views about how he quit. I'm curious. And I think you'll be very shocked.
Yeah, man. I would say if this isn't enough motivation for you to start addressing and thinking about this deeply, yeah, like you said, go on Google, look at studies, scientific studies of how, masturbation and porn can even affect your performance in the gym. Like, it's insane.
It will drop your testosterone.
Yeah, how much it affects your anxiety and your mood. And so, if you're a masculine man, looking to get gains in the gym or just live in a better headspace, like, let that be enough motivation to tackle it.
That is our bro science, official bro science.
There you go, bro science.
Masturbation and porn is killing your gains.
Absolutely.
If that's your only motivation,
your pumps will increase 3 times if you stop.
We're not endorsing that. So this is a good segue into another one that I have, which is don't chase women, chase purpose. But it's hard to say don't chase women at 18 years old.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are some 18-year-olds chasing women, but let's be honest. If you're 18, you might have a full-on beard and a full-time job at 18.
Yeah.
You're still a boy. And your dating pool is most likely other girls.
Yeah.
So when you're running around, and I'm not saying you can't find your soulmate doing that, because we both started dating our wives at 18. So it's hard to say, don't waste your time chasing, women but you just have to, I think the understanding that you're a boy and they are girls. So you are not finding somebody who is at the point where you know who they are for the rest of their lives. Not saying you can't find that person and grow with them and realize that.
Yeah.
And that might only take a year or two of a close, intimate relationship. But if you're just going around chasing girls, you're going to most likely attract the wrong ones, especially at that age.
Yeah.
Because they're girls. They don't know who they're going to be when they're a few years from now anyway. Neither do you. So it's kind of a vain pursuit, if you will.
Yeah, I would say, I guess to rephrase that, stop chasing women and chase wives. Like, I think our culture has skewed so much what is dating, right? And so there's an argument to be made that dating is a time to learn about relationships and even be in a few relationships so you can learn from them, right? But that's not what we make it anymore. We make it just have as much fun as you can, get as much ass as you can. And
the fact that dating, you have to specify if you're dating around, if it's more than one person or not.
Yes.
It just kind of shows where we're at with what dating means.
Yeah. But I mean, the purpose of dating, let's be real. Like, if you're actually serious about dating and you respect yourself and respect women, then you should be dating to find a wife, dating to find a partner that you want to live the rest of your life with. And I think if you have that in mind, you can still go through the dating scene and maybe have a few relationships, but you can really, I think, learn a lot more from it. But if you do the cultural norm of just, it's not really dating, it's just hooking up and having fun. I'm glad you're having fun nights.
I'm 18, I can go do what I want now.
Exactly.
Go to maybe not bars yet, at least in America, but
Yeah, you can go clubbing though at 18, right?
Yeah, there's bars that'll let you in. You could get your way around anything. You're an adult, probably have a car. You could
False IDs.
go live whatever life you want and live that hedonic pleasure, but it's not going to get you very far, especially at 18.
Yeah.
Kidding me? I think I looked like I was 15 when I was 18, so it probably wouldn't have worked too well for me, but
Yeah, man. I would say what it means to be masculine is to take every single aspect of your life seriously, right? And so take dating seriously. Don't just, go out there and do whatever. Like, have purpose behind it. And I think if you have purpose behind it, you can have a fun time dating, but also like really learn and really seek out your future partner.
and you're going to learn a lot about yourself too.
Yeah.
I mean, at 18, you're in a season of exploration of growth, and getting to know other people intimately is going to force you to get to know yourself intimately. I have learned more about myself through my relationship, mostly with my wife, than I would have ever learned a lifetime of solitude, because let's be honest, I'm kind of just a bullheadish man, right? I don't need to think about my emotions. I don't need to dig below surface level for a lot of things. And being in a relationship, well, it forces you out of your comfort zone if that's not something you want to do, but it does make you face some of those facts, and you will learn more about yourself too.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience. I think first thing I learned is that men also like to be the little spoon. So I think that's something that's thrown around, that as a man, you always have to be the big spoon. But once you find your wife, man, or a significant other, it feels good to be the little spoon every once in a while.
When I was peak bulk, I had easily like 100 pounds on my wife, and I'm like, 6 inches taller than her. So I'm much bigger than she is. And you know my wife, she's not a small little 5'2" person.
Yeah.
She's tall. I'm like, yeah, it's like, I'm a big masculine man talking about masculinity. And then behind closed doors, it's like, heck yeah, I want to be the little spoon.
Oh yeah.
I think that's peak masculinity right there.
Exactly.
All right, I think that's a really good place to close right there. Is our big takeaways is porn kills your gains and men like to be the little spoon.
Yep.
There we go. We're closing in on episode 40, and I think that sums up Chasing Masculinity quite well. With each of these things that we've talked about, we've kind of just went over a few different things, reflected on who we were, who we are. What is one sentence that you think you would say to your 18-year-old self?
The one sentence that I would say to my 18-year-old self is, be prepared for the tossing and turning of life, and be prepared to just suck it up, man, get through it and learn from it. And everything will be okay. Don't be too anxious about life. What would you say?
I agree. I think every 18-year-old wants to be that 22-year-old millionaire they see on YouTube with a new Lamborghini.
Yeah.
But yeah, life is you're gonna get put on in a tumble dryer. It's gonna throw you around, and that's okay. You're gonna, like you said, you're gonna get tossed and turned. You're gonna hit all those failures, and you don't know where that's gonna. With every time you try something and you fail, you don't know, once that happens, the course that you were on, it's going to change a little bit, and you don't know where that's going. So you need to expect that. You need to be able to grow from that. And at the end of the day, you just got to stay faithful and trust God that, you know what, you're probably going to be all right. Just keep fighting, keep doing it, keep being a man, keep trying to be a better man, keep putting your head down and just fighting and grinding and doing what it takes to be better and to grow.
Yeah, that was a long sentence, Colton.
Thank you. I'm really good at droning on. So to wrap this guy up, encourage everybody who's listening. Thank you for tuning in today. Hopefully there's some good insights in here. Matthew, I want to thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate having you on. It's always a fun conversation. I encourage everyone to just reflect and reset. Doesn't matter what stage of your life. I think even I could use the information we've talked about it's been almost 8 years since I was 18. So,
Mm-hmm.
and this stuff is still just as relevant to me. You were talking that it's been 10 years since you were 18. So I feel like this information is probably relevant to anybody who's 18 to 58.
Mm-hmm.
So I think reflect and reset based on your own experience and what you would tell yourself when you're 18, when you were 18, and just be able to take that and say, okay, if that's the advice I was giving myself, or I would give myself, am I doing that now? Or what can I do to better implement this now? Because there's always some level of growth that I think we can take away from that. And I encourage you to share that with people. Share it with a friend and pass that wisdom forward to others. And let's keep this conversation going about what it means to be a man. So Matthew, thank you again. It's been a pleasure.